But this is my point. Every single thing that we do here is being racialized, and that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong. Instead of treating people like Americans, all as Americans.
But he was complaining that...
Well, as the candidates wrap up their campaigns, the so-called ground game goes on. It could be pivotal with states like Florida and Nevada up for grabs. Mobilizing Latino voters is obviously a big part of the effort. And as we've been talking about, early voting numbers already tell some of the story there. Our CNN Politics executive editor, Mark Preston, joins us now with that. So you got new data that sheds light on it. What have you found in the numbers?
Well, Anderson, lots of numbers here, so the panel's got to pay close attention right now so they can argue afterwards. Nearly 37 million people have voted in 39 states nationwide. Now, John King last hour described this as this is possibly the year of the Latino. Well, right now, 27.3 million Hispanics are eligible to vote. It's about 12% of the electorate. Let's first look at Florida as we talk here. Florida, a little more than 5.7 million. We think that number is actually a bit higher right now, have already early voted in the state that has closed. But let's look into the demographics right now. Specifically, let's look at these numbers and see what has increased and what has decreased. Well, 41% of the white vote has increased, about 13% of the African-American vote. But look at this number right here. Since 2008, plus 103%, 103% increase from 2008 to 2016 in actual ballots that have been cast by Hispanics in the state of Florida. Let's go to the state of North Carolina. There you're talking about 2.5, maybe 2.6 million people had cast their early votes. Well, look at this right here. As you can see, there is an increase in the Hispanic vote and the white vote. We saw a drop-off in the African-American vote in regards to ballots being dropped off. When we look at those percentages right now, about 24% more for the white vote, negative 5% in the African-American participation in the early vote in North Carolina, a troubling sign for Democrats. But this is a good sign right here. About 85% increase when it came to actual votes from 2012 to 2016, or I should say ballots that had been put through by Hispanic voters. Now, we should note that Barack Obama barely lost North Carolina in 2012, and of course, they're fighting for it right now, Republicans and Democrats in 2016, Anderson.
I want you to listen, Mark, to what the Nevada Republican Party chair said at a Trump rally last night.
Last night in Clark County, they kept a poll open till 10 o'clock at night so a certain group could vote. It wasn't in an area transition. The polls were supposed to close at 7. This was kept open till 10. Yeah, you feel free right now?
So we talked to I talked to Kellyanne Conway about this in our last hour. What is he talking about there?
Well, he's talking in Clark County now. He's talking about a polling location right outside of Las Vegas that was held open late because people were actually in line and they couldn't vote. In fact, on Friday alone, Clark County saw an increase, Anderson, of 57,000 people actually cast ballots. That's the highest ever for Clark County. Let's just dig a little bit into the Nevada numbers. About 7.7 million people cast, or 770,000 people cast early ballots in the state of Nevada. But if we dig in a little bit and look at statewide, that's a bit of an increase now from we saw about 9% across the state. But Clark County right here, this is an important number. That was an 8% increase. Now, what's interesting about Clark County right now, we should note it is 30% Hispanic. Hispanics, of course, tend to vote Democrat. In fact, in the state of Nevada alone, Barack Obama won 70% of the Hispanic vote, Anderson.
All right, Mark Preston. Mark, thanks for joining the panel now. Senior political reporter Nia Malika Henderson. I mean, Nia, it's interesting to hear the Nevada Republican there talking about this as if it's some sort of grand conspiracy or system that is rigged. These are people who are online at the right time to vote. Just the line was very long, so they kept the ballot open.
And you almost hope that those folks in the audience already cast their ballots too. I mean, you've got all of this organization that has gone on by the Democratic campaigns in states like Nevada, in states like Florida, and we are seeing this Latino surge. I mean, it was.
But the point is, I mean, if somebody's online at the appropriate time to vote, they should be allowed to vote.
Legal. But I think from the Trump campaign, I mean, they have been talking about this rigged election for days and days and days,
Right.
and the assumption has always been it will be rigged by certain people, certain black people.
But just to use that as an example of rigging is just factually incorrect.
These certain people, we could call them fellow Americans. We could call them our neighbors. We could call them voters.
Thank you, John.
We should call them. And look, there are going to be neighborhoods in the United States. There will be precincts in the United States on Tuesday night where that is a Trump precinct. That is an overwhelmingly Trump area. And there will be people in line, and the poll closing will come. And they better stand there, and they should bring them water, and they should wait. And if it takes till sunup, and let them vote. This is the thing that drives me nuts, in the sense that it should be easier for people to vote. Number one, and a Republican Party that's in a ditch when it comes to Latino voters, African American voters, and increasingly Asian voters. Asian voters used to be a Republican constituency. They now vote in the same percentage as Latinos against the Republican Party. The chairman, I'm sorry. I hope he just was having a bad night. These certain people are voters. They're Americans, and when people talk like this, and then the Latinos vote overwhelmingly for the other guys, you wonder why is this happening? Well, guess why it's happening.
It's been the story of the Trump campaign, right? I mean, this kind of rhetoric, this kind of otherizing of certain groups.
But there's
so
a
it's
real
no
danger.
surprise
Can I make an
that
observation,
it's-
Anderson? I went back and I reread the autopsy report that was commissioned in the aftermath of the Romney loss, and it was published in 2013. And there's a line that stands out. If Hispanic Americans perceive that a GOP nominee does not want them in the country, they won't pay attention to the next sentence.
Yep.
It's a lesson I don't think
But
has
I
been
think we're
clear.
reading a bit too much into this by saying this was a knock at Hispanic voters. Look, he was merely noting this poll stayed open here at other locations had closed. I
Exactly.
agree with you. If you're in line
I'm
at
talking
the
about the
appropriate
nominee,
time, you should
not
stay
the
open.
chairman.
And by the way, we've also got to point out Democrats are playing the same sort of game when they say Republican attorneys general across the nation are trying to suppress the vote. Both campaigns are on edge. This is a
But
crucial time. It is
I'm just
the same
making the
thing.
observation that Donald Trump, to me,
Trump repeated what the
ne-
chairman said and said it was rigged.
never read the autopsy report.
Yeah, Van, or Pelt?
The Democrats are decrying efforts to suppress the vote. The Republicans are encouraging them. That's not the same, Kaylee. They're both talking about voter suppression.
Voter ID.
One is for it, the other's against
Fighting
it.
voter ID is voter suppression.
Exactly.
Well, no. Well, hold on a second. One of the things I don't think we have talked enough about is that there is a ferocious fight in the courts right now. And unfortunately, it is against Republican attorneys general and Republican legislatures that have seemed to almost surgically design new rules and new restrictions that offend the judges. I'm not talking about partisan Democrats. I mean judges that are saying there seems to be no logical explanation for some of these new voting rules except to go after black voters. Now, that's not me. That's the judges. And so we need to applaud actually these a lot of young lawyers out there who are fighting this fight in the courts and actually winning these fights in the court to try to keep these bad laws at bay.
My point is, Van, though, that a lot of times we see the left use, voter ID is a good example.
Right.
They use that to say this is the reason there is low black turnout. When meanwhile, there's a PolitiFact article that in 2012 in states that had voter ID, actually black turnout was higher, which negates the whole left's argument that blacks aren't turning out because of voter ID. So you guys play the
But
same
this
game
is-
that
but this is-
Republicans
But
do.
do you know why that is?
Do I know why?
Why
there was
black
high
turnout was up despite that?
Because we
we
fought
organized
back.
around it. We
Yeah, we
use that.
fought back.
We use that as a rallying
Yeah,
point to
in
tell
fact, let me
people
tell you
don't let them
something.
take away your right to vote.
There are
But you
heroes
see-
from
Don't credit.
You see-
Don't
Not all
credit
the
to
time.
suppress
I'm-
it.
When
I'm gonna let you finish, but there are heroes from 2012,
Right.
Like Ben Jealous and others who we don't talk about anymore, who say once they saw those bad bills, went out there and put an extra 1 million black voters in the voting booths just to say you're not going to stop us. But that does not mean that it wasn't intention.
Right.
The intention wasn't to stop us.
Can we talk about?
But this,
Go ahead.
but this goes to the point that I've been trying to make all year, and where we have disagreed, is that the Democratic Party's political formula from its founding is to separate people by race, and then use that as the racial fuel to push their agenda. That's what this is all about. That's what we're missing
I think
entirely.
it's about justice.
I mean, why are we?
I think
why
it's
are we-
about equal opportunity to vote. I think it's about
Which
a
is
struggle.
colorless.
Well, hey, listen, it should be, and I wish you would let your party know that because they keep designing these laws that even judges say are just designed to suppress the black vote.
What does certain groups mean, in your opinion, Jeffrey? When the Nevada GOP
I mean,
chair-
I have no idea what he was saying, but if he's trying to use this as a racial thing, of course I'd condemn that. But what I'm suggesting to you is the fact that he could mean union members, for all I know. He could mean 1,000 different things. I honestly don't know. But this is my point. Every single thing that we do here is being racialized, and that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong. Instead of treating people like Americans, all
but
as
here's-
Americans.
But he was complaining that
here-
people who were in line on time were getting allowed to vote. whatever you call them, whatever word you use, the people were in line on. There's no evidence that the people were not there by the time they were supposed to be there. They're being allowed
If that's
to
the
vote.
case, yeah, I agree.
We got to take another break. Just at Donald Trump's 5-state sprint today included Michigan and Minnesota. What does his late push in traditionally blue states say about his strategy? We'll look at that ahead.
Thank you, everybody.